The Caitian princess lay bleeding, burned and broken in the battered escape pod, utterly alone in the uncaring void of space, her life hanging by a thread. Mirasha shuddered. As ere the princess embodied their future, losing her would shatter the Caitian spirit. Raoul began to pace. Then a human ship found her pod adrift, the USS Endeavour. He looked up sharply. You know what this means. Exactly. We need them. The princess's fate and the hope of our people now rests in human hands. Stars help us all. The consequences crashed over Mirasha, like a collapsing star. If the human medic failed, the princess would die. The Emperor, mad with grief, would rain vengeance on the galaxy, and the Caitian race would wither, lost and leaderless. Everything hinged on one injured alien girl and the skill of an unknown human doctor. The stakes had never been higher. Mirasha could only pray to the Ancient Ones that human compassion would prove stronger than the cold, merciless void that had almost claimed Princess Yaksa. Incredible, breathed Mirasha as she listened to Raoul recount the humans' heroic actions, marveling at their compassion and advanced medical capabilities. So the USS Endeavour just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Raoul nodded, his eyes still distant as if reliving the events. Indeed, Commander Nakamura wasted no time in changing course when they detected the princess's distress beacon. It's as if the stars themselves guided them to her. And their chief medical officer personally led the rescue? Mirasha asked, her respect for the human doctor growing by the second. Lieutenant Commander Holmes himself, confirmed Raoul. He and his team found Yaksa on the brink of death, her injuries far worse than we had feared. But they didn't hesitate for a moment, rushing her straight to their medical bay. Mirasha leaned forward, hanging on every word. What happened next? Raoul's voice took on a tone of awe. The humans worked tirelessly, Mirasha. For hours on end, Holmes and his team fought to save Yaksa's life. He personally performed the surgeries, repairing her wounds and mending her broken bones. Remarkable, murmured Mirasha. I had no idea human medicine was so advanced. That's not all, Raoul continued. They used cutting-edge technologies like nanite regeneration and neural interface healing to accelerate her recovery. It's like nothing I've ever seen before. Mirasha sat back, processing the incredible tale. And they did all of this without expecting anything in return. No political favors, no monetary gain. Raoul met her gaze, his eyes shining with a newfound respect for humanity. That's the most incredible part, Mirasha. The humans saw a life in peril and did everything in their power to save her, simply because it was the right thing to do. They embodied the very best of what sentient beings can be. Mirasha felt a swell of emotion rising in her chest. The fate of their beloved princess, and indeed the future of their entire species, had been placed in the hands of an alien race they barely knew. And yet, in their darkest hour, the humans had proven themselves to be true friends and allies. I never thought I'd say this, Mirasha began, her voice thick with gratitude, but we owe the humans a debt we can never repay. They've given us a gift beyond measure, hope. Raoul nodded solemnly, the weight of the moment hanging in the air between them. Indeed, Mirasha, the humans have shown us the true meaning of compassion and selflessness. They've reminded us that even in the vast, cold expanse of the universe, there is still light to be found. The two Caitians fell silent, each lost in their own thoughts as they contemplated the profound impact a single act of kindness could have. The USS Endeavour and her crew had done more than save a life. They had forged a bond between... Precisely, Raoul agreed, his eyes shining with admiration. The humans showed Yaksa a path of unity and understanding, one that transcends the boundaries of species and culture. Mirasha's tail swished thoughtfully as she considered the implications. It's remarkable, isn't it, that a chance encounter with a compassionate crew could have such a profound impact on our princess, and by extension, our entire civilization. Raoul nodded, his voice taking on a tone of reverence. Indeed, Mirasha, the humans didn't just heal Yaksa's physical wounds, they healed her spirit as well. Through their actions, They demonstrated the power of empathy and the strength that comes from helping others. Mersha leaned back, her mind racing with possibilities. And to think, all of this happened because Commander Nakamura and her crew chose to investigate a distress signal, even though it wasn't part of their mission. They went out of their way to help a stranger in need, and in doing so they may have changed the course of our history. Roll's whiskers twitched with amusement. You know, Mersha, I think Princess Yaksa learned more about leadership and compassion during her time on the Endeavour than she ever could have in the royal court. The humans showed her what it truly means to be a leader, to put the needs of others before your own, and to work tirelessly for the greater good. Mersha's eyes widened as a sudden realization struck her. Roll, do you think this experience will change the way Yaksa rules when she becomes Empress? Could this be the beginning of a new era for the Cation people, one based on the principles of cooperation and understanding that the humans embody? Roll's expression turned thoughtful, his gaze distant as if peering into a hopeful future. I believe so, Mersha. Princess Yaksa has seen firsthand the power of compassion and the strength that comes from unity. I have no doubt that she will carry these lessons with her as she leads our people into a brighter tomorrow. Mersha felt a swell of emotion rising in her chest, a mixture of gratitude and hope for what the future might hold. Then we owe the humans more than we could ever repay. Not only did they save our princess, but they may have also given us the key to a better future, one where we work together with other species to build a more peaceful and prosperous galaxy. Roll's ears flattened as he recalled the Emperor's reaction. His Majesty was initially furious, as you can imagine. He felt that Yaksa's decision to remain with the humans was a betrayal of her duties as princess and heir to the throne. Mersha nodded, her whiskers twitching thoughtfully. I can understand his perspective. Our people have always valued loyalty and dedication to the Pride above all else. Indeed, Roll agreed, his tail swishing behind him. But as Yaksa explained her reasons, the Emperor's anger gradually gave way to understanding. She spoke of the compassion and selflessness she had witnessed among the humans, and how their way of life had opened her eyes to new possibilities for our own society. Mersha leaned forward, her interest piqued. How did she convince him? Roll's eyes sparkled with admiration as he recounted the princess's words. Yaksa told the Emperor that by learning from the humans and forging stronger bonds with them, we could not only improve our own lives, but also become better leaders and allies to other species. She argued that our isolation and pride had made us vulnerable, and that it was time to embrace change. Mersha's ears perked up, impressed by the princess's wisdom. That must have taken a great deal of courage to challenge the Emperor and our traditional ways of thinking. It did, Roll confirmed, his voice filled with respect. But Yaksa's experiences on the Endeavour had given her a new sense of purpose and conviction. She was determined to bring about a new era of cooperation and understanding for our people, even if it meant defying centuries of tradition. Mersha sat back, her mind racing with the implications of Yaksa's actions, so the Emperor agreed to let her stay with the humans. Roll nodded, a smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. He did, though not without some reservations. He recognized that Yaksa's time on the Endeavour had changed her, and that perhaps it was time for our society to change as well. He gave her his blessing to remain with the humans, on the condition that she would return to Cation with the knowledge and insights she had gained to help lead our people into a new future. Mersha felt a swell of hope rising in her chest. This could be the beginning of a new chapter for our people, Roll. If Yaksa can bring back the lessons she learns from the humans and inspire others to follow her example, we may finally break free of the cycles of conflict and mistrust that have plagued us for so long. Mersha's whiskers twitched with excitement. That's incredible, Roll. To think that a near tragedy could lead to such a groundbreaking opportunity for our people. Roll nodded, his eyes sparkling. It just goes to show that even in our darkest moments, there is always the potential for growth and change. Princess Yaksa's ordeal has opened up a whole new world of possibilities for the Cation people. Mersha leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. Tell me more about this cultural exchange program. How exactly will it work? Roll's tail swished as he explained. Well, the plan is for a group of Cassian scholars and healers to spend time on the Endeavour, working alongside the human crew and learning from their advanced medical technologies. In exchange, a team of human experts will come to Kate to share their knowledge and help us improve our own healthcare system. Mersha's eyes widened. That's a bold move, inviting humans to our homeworld, but I can see the potential benefits. By learning from each other, we can strengthen the bonds between our species and build a better future for all. Roll smiled, his fangs glinting. Exactly, and who knows, maybe this is just the beginning. If the exchange program is successful, it could pave the way for even greater cooperation between Cassians and humans in the future. Mersha nodded, her mind racing with the possibilities. Just imagine what we could achieve together, Roll. By combining our strengths and learning from each other's cultures, we could unlock new frontiers in science, medicine, and diplomacy. Roll's expression turned thoughtful. It's a brave new world, Mersha, and it's all thanks to Princess Yaksa and the compassionate actions of the humans on the Endeavour. They've shown us that even in the vast expanse of space, there is still room for kindness and understanding. Mersha felt a swell of pride and hope rising in her chest. Then let us honor their example, Roll. Let us embrace this opportunity with open hearts and minds and work together to build a brighter future for all our peoples. Roll raised his glass, his eyes glinting with determination. To Princess Yaksa and the crew of the Endeavour. May their courage and compassion light the way for us all. Mersha raised her own glass, the weight of the moment settling over them both. And to the future of the Cassian-Human Alliance, may it be a shining beacon of hope and unity in the galaxy. Mersha's eyes sparkled with intrigue as she leaned closer, her tail swishing behind her. Tell me more about Princess Yaksa's time in the medical bay. What kind of procedures did she learn from the humans? Roll's whiskers twitched as he recalled the details. Well, she was particularly fascinated by their use of nanobots. These tiny machines could be injected into a patient's bloodstream, where they would seek out and repair damaged tissues at the cellular level. Yaksa spent hours studying their programming and learning how to guide them using specialized medical interfaces. Mersha nodded, impressed by the depth of Yaksa's dedication. It sounds like she really threw herself into her studies, but you mentioned that she also immersed herself in human culture. What was that like for her? He leaned back, a fond smile on his face. But I think her favorite part was the food. She was absolutely obsessed with pizza and spent hours in the kitchen with the ship's chef, learning how to make the perfect crust and blend the ideal combination of toppings. She even experimented with Cassian ingredients, creating a fusion pizza that became a hit with the crew. Mersha laughed, shaking her head in wonder. A Cassian pizza. I never thought I'd hear those words together. It just goes to show how much she embraced the human way of life. Roll nodded, his expression turning thoughtful. Indeed, but it wasn't just about the surface-level experiences. Yaksa also formed deep, meaningful connections with the crew, especially with Holmes. He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. Those two were practically inseparable. They spent hours in the medical bay working side by side and discussing the finer points of human and Cassian physiology. But they also spent a great deal of time together off-duty, sharing stories about their families, their hopes and dreams for the future. Mersha's eyes widened, a knowing smile playing at the corners of her mouth. It sounds like they became more than just colleagues. Did something romantic develop between them? He shook his head, his expression turning serious. What I can say is that their relationship, whatever its nature, had a profound impact on Yaksa. She learned so much from Holmes, not just about medicine, but about compassion, about the power of connection and understanding between different peoples. Mersha nodded, her own expression thoughtful. It's amazing, isn't it? How a single relationship, a single experience can change the course of a life, and possibly the course of history. Roll met her gaze, his eyes glinting with a newfound respect for the human crew of the Endeavour. Indeed, Princess Yaksa went to the humans seeking medical knowledge, but what she found was so much more. She found a new way of looking at the universe, a new appreciation for the bonds that tie us all together, regardless of our differences. He raised his glass, his voice ringing with conviction. And that, my dear Mersha, is the true power of the Cation Human Cultural Exchange Program. It's not just about sharing knowledge or technology. It's about building bridges, about fostering understanding and cooperation between our peoples. Mersha raised her own glass, the weight of Roll's words settling over her like a mantle of responsibility. To Princess Yaksa and the crew of the Endeavour, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. May their example inspire us all to reach beyond our borders, to seek out new connections and new possibilities for our people and for the galaxy as a whole. Roll nodded, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears. To the future, he said softly, his glass clinking against Mersha's, and to the brave souls who will lead us there, one step at a time. Mersha's ears flattened in shock. The Emperor really forbade Yaksa from contacting the humans, even after everything they did for her? Roll nodded solemnly. He did. The Emperor was deeply unsettled by the idea of his daughter forming such a close bond with a human, especially a romantic one. He couldn't fathom the notion of a Cation princess, the heir to the throne, choosing a mate from another species. Mersha's whiskers twitched with agitation. But surely he must have recognized the value of what Yaksa learned from the humans. The medical knowledge alone could revolutionize our healthcare system and save countless lives. Roll sighed, his tail swishing behind him. He did, to an extent, but his traditionalist views and his fear of losing control over Yaksa's future clouded his judgment. He saw her relationship with Holmes as a threat to the Cation way of life and to his own authority as Emperor. Mersha shook her head, her eyes filled with sympathy for the young princess. I can't even imagine how difficult that must have been for Yaksa, to have found such a deep connection with someone, only to be forced to sever it. Roll's expression turned pensive. It was a dark time for her. She struggled with the conflict between her duty to her people and her own desires. She knew that the Emperor's decree was wrong, that the Cations had so much to gain from a closer relationship with the humans, but she also knew that defying her father outright could have severe consequences, not just for herself, but for the entire empire. Mersha leaned forward, her curiosity piqued. So what did she do? How did she navigate such a delicate situation? Roll's eyes glinted with admiration. She did what any true leader would do. She found a way to balance her responsibilities with her convictions. She continued to advocate for closer ties with the humans, but she did so through diplomatic channels, using her influence as princess to slowly chip away at the Emperor's resistance. He paused, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. And as for her relationship with Holmes, well, let's just say that the Emperor's decree didn't stop them from finding ways to communicate. They exchanged encoded messages through the Cultural Exchange Program, using their knowledge of each other's languages and customs to hide their true meaning from prying eyes. Mersha's eyes widened, a smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. That's incredible. To think that a love story could be unfolding right under the Emperor's nose, all while Yaksa works to bring about a new era of cooperation between our peoples. Roll chuckled softly. It's like something out of a human romance novel, isn't it? But that's the power of the bond that Yaksa and Holmes share. It transcends the boundaries of species and culture, and it gives them the strength to fight for what they believe in, even in the face of adversity. Mersha nodded, her expression turning thoughtful. It's a testament to the impact that the humans have had on Yaksa and on our society as a whole. They've shown us that there's so much more to the universe than we ever imagined, and that by opening ourselves up to new ideas and new connections, we can achieve things that we never thought possible. Roll raised his glass, his eyes sparkling with hope. To Princess Yaksa and Lieutenant Commander Holmes, he said, his voice ringing with conviction. May their love story be a shining example of what can happen when two cultures come together in the spirit of understanding and cooperation. Mersha raised her own glass, the weight of the moment settling over her like a warm embrace. And to the future of the Cation Human Alliance, she added, her voice trembling with emotion. "May it bring about a new era of peace and prosperity for all our peoples, and may it remind us that even in the darkest of times, there is always hope to be found in the connections we forge with one another." Ferisha's eyes widened in horror as Roll described the devastating impact of the viral outbreak. The normally bustling streets of their cities had become eerie ghost towns, with only the occasional sound of sirens and the distant wails of the grieving breaking the silence. Hospitals overflowed with the sick and dying, their medical staff working around the clock in a desperate attempt to save as many lives as possible. "I remember the fear that gripped our people," Roll said, his voice heavy with emotion. "Every day the death toll climbed higher, and it seemed like there was no end in sight. Our doctors tried everything they could think of, but nothing seemed to work. It was like the virus was always one step ahead of us." He shook his head, his ears flattening against his skull. "I'll never forget the looks on the faces of the families who lost loved ones, the despair, the anguish. It was heartbreaking. And with each passing day, more and more Caitians fell ill. It was like watching our entire world crumble before our eyes." Ferisha felt a chill run down her spine as she listened to Roll's words. She had been off-world when the outbreak first hit, and by the time she returned, the situation had already become dire. She remembered the eerie silence that had greeted her upon her arrival, the streets empty save for the occasional patrol of medical personnel in protective gear. But then, just when it seemed like all hope was lost, the Endeavour arrived. Roll continued, his voice taking on a note of awe. "I remember the moment they entered orbit, their ship gleaming like a beacon of hope against the blackness of space. And when we learned that Lieutenant Commander Holmes himself was leading the medical team, well, it was like a weight had been lifted from our collective shoulders." Mersha nodded, remembering the surge of relief that had swept through their people at the news. "I heard that Holmes and his team had been working tirelessly to find a cure, even before they knew about the outbreak on our world," she said. "That's right," Roll confirmed. Apparently, Yaksa had brought back samples of the virus during her time on the Endeavour, and Holmes had recognized its potential threat. He and his team had been working around the clock to develop a vaccine, hoping to be prepared in case of just such a scenario. He leaned forward, his eyes shining with admiration. "And when they heard about what was happening on our planet, they didn't hesitate for a moment. They loaded up their ship with medical supplies and personnel and set off immediately to help. They knew the risks, knew that they could be exposing themselves to the virus by coming here. But they came anyway, because they knew that we needed them." Ferisha felt a lump form in her throat as she imagined the scene. The Endeavour, a gleaming symbol of hope and compassion, descending through the atmosphere of their beleaguered world. The human medical team, led by the indomitable Lieutenant Commander Holmes, disembarking and immediately setting to work, their expertise and dedication a shining example of the very best of what sentient beings could be. "It must have been a sight to behold," she said softly, her voice thick with emotion. "To see the humans working side by side with our own doctors, sharing their knowledge and resources in the fight against this terrible disease." Roll nodded, his expression one of profound gratitude. "It was a true testament to the bond that had formed between our peoples," he said. "A bond forged in the crucible of shared hardship and common purpose, and it was a bond that would prove to be our salvation in the end." Mersha's eyes shone with admiration as she listened to Roll's account. "I remember seeing Princess Yaksa and Lieutenant Commander Holmes working side by side in the medical tents, their faces masked and their hands gloved as they tended to the sick and dying. They moved with a sense of purpose and unity, their actions perfectly coordinated, as if they had been working together for years." Roll nodded, a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. It was a sight to behold, wasn't it? Two beings from different worlds, united in their determination to save lives and alleviate suffering. I remember watching as they conferred over patient charts, their heads bent close together, as they discussed treatment options and strategies for containment. He paused, his expression turning thoughtful. But it wasn't just their medical expertise that made them such an effective team. It was the way they communicated with each other, the way they seemed to anticipate each other's needs and thoughts without even having to speak. It was like they had a connection that transcended language and culture, a bond forged in the crucible of shared purpose and mutual respect. Firusha leaned forward, her eyes wide with curiosity. And what about the Emperor? How did he react when he saw his daughter working so closely with a human? Rol chuckled, shaking his head. At first he was shocked. He had always been so resistant to the idea of Yaksa forming a close relationship with a human, and to see her working hand in hand with Holmes must have been a jarring sight for him. But as he watched them together, saw the way they interacted and the impact they were having on our people, something in him seemed to shift. He paused, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. I was there when he approached them, you know. He stood at the entrance to the medical tent watching them work for a long moment before clearing his throat to get their attention. Yaksa and Holmes looked up, their eyes widening in surprise when they saw who it was. Mersha leaned in, her heart racing with anticipation. What did he say? Rol smiled, his eyes distant as he recalled the moment. He looked at Holmes, his expression serious and his voice low. Lieutenant Commander, he said, I owe you an apology. I have been wrong to doubt the value of your friendship with my daughter and the strength of the bond between our peoples. You have shown me the true meaning of compassion and selflessness, and for that I am deeply grateful. He paused, his voice thick with emotion, and then he turned to Yaksa, his eyes shining with pride and love. My daughter, he said, you have proven yourself to be a true leader and a shining example of what it means to be Cation. You have brought honor to our family and to our people, and I could not be more proud of you. Firusha felt a lump form in her throat as she listened to Rol's words. She could only imagine the impact that moment must have had on Yaksa and Holmes, the validation and recognition of all they had worked so hard to achieve. Rol's voice brought her back to the present. And then, in a gesture that shocked everyone present, the Emperor extended his hand to Holmes, offering a traditional human handshake. Holmes hesitated for only a moment before grasping the Emperor's hand firmly, a smile spreading across his face as he did so. He looked up at Merusha, his expression one of wonder and awe. It was a moment that will go down in history, Merusha, a moment when two cultures, two species came together in a spirit of unity and understanding, a moment that proved that even in our darkest hour, there is always hope to be found in the connections we forge with one another. Mersha's eyes widened in surprise at Rol's revelation. The Emperor offered Holmes a place in the royal court? That's an incredible honor, especially for a human. I bet Princess Yaksa was thrilled at the prospect of having Holmes stay on Kate. Rol's expression turned somber, and he shook his head sadly. You'd think so, wouldn't you? But as much as Holmes cared for Yaksa and our people, he knew that his place was among the stars, exploring new worlds and helping those in need. He thanked the Emperor for his generosity, but politely declined the offer. Mersha frowned, her ears drooping slightly. Oh, that must have been so hard for Yaksa to accept. After everything they had been through together, all the challenges they had faced and overcome, I can't imagine how painful it must have been for her to say goodbye to him. Rol nodded, his voice heavy with emotion. It was a bittersweet moment, to be sure. Yaksa and Holmes had grown so close during their time together, and it was clear to everyone that they had developed feelings for each other that went beyond mere friendship. But in the end, they both knew that their duties to their respective peoples had to come first. He sighed deeply, his gaze turning distant as he recalled the scene. I was there when they said their farewells, you know. They stood together in the great hall of the palace, surrounded by the royal court and the Endeavour's crew. Yaksa was trying so hard to be brave, to hold back her tears, but you could see the pain in her eyes. And Holmes, he looked like a man torn in two, caught between his love for Yaksa and his duty to his mission. Rol's voice grew softer, almost reverent, but even in that moment of grief they were both so strong, so dignified. They clasped hands one last time and made a promise to always remember the time they had spent together and the bond they had forged. And then Holmes turned and walked away, back to his ship and his crew, while Yaksa watched him go with a look of longing that would have broken even the hardest heart. Mersha was silent for a moment, processing the weight of Rol's words. It's a sad ending in a way, she said finally, her voice heavy with emotion. To think of two people who cared for each other so deeply, being forced apart by circumstance and duty, it seems almost cruel. But Roll shook his head, a small smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. No, Marusha, it's not a sad ending at all. It's a testament to the strength of their bond, and to the power of the human spirit. Even in the face of great adversity and personal sacrifice, Yaksa and Holmes chose to put the needs of others before their own. They recognized that their love, as deep and true as it was, could not come at the expense of the greater good. He leaned forward, his eyes shining with conviction. And that, my dear Marusha, is the true lesson of this story, that even in our darkest moments there is always hope to be found in the kindness and compassion of others, and that sometimes the greatest act of love is being willing to let go, for the sake of something larger than oneself. Marusha nodded slowly, a new understanding dawning in her eyes. You're right, Roll. Yaksa and Holmes may have parted ways, but the impact they had on each other, and on our people, will last forever. Their story is one of sacrifice, yes, but also of hope, and of the enduring power of the bonds we forge with one another, even across the vastness of space. You have reached the end of the story. If you enjoyed this story and want to support us, please leave a like and subscribe to our channel, and for every comment that says 88, I will heart every single one of them. Thank you for your time.